Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. We are here tonight because the polls have just closed in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. It is Aftyn Behn versus Matt Van Epps. This is normally not a race that anybody would be paying attention to, but I think this is a unique situation where even though this is an R plus 22 district, meaning this district is 22 points more conservative than the rest of the country, the political environment is so devastating for Republicans right now that even an R plus 22 district has become something of a battleground this evening. So as far as I'm aware, the polls have closed in Tennessee. I don't expect to, as far as I'm aware, those polls have closed. Let me just confirm that they don't close at 8. I'll get that information right now. You're right. No, it is 8 o'clock. So we have about 30 minutes left until the polls close. So just some level setting here in terms of what we can expect in about a half hour once the polls close, 32 minutes from now. The first votes usually come in within a few minutes after the polls close. So in the October primary, about 4,000 votes were dropped at 8:03 p.m. Eastern, so it won't take that long. So about 3 minutes after the hour, we can expect our first batch of votes. Tennessee counties don't break out their vote drops by method, so we shouldn't see we shouldn't see early votes and then election day votes segmented out. With that said, a few questions I've gotten posed quite a bit as far as what we can expect this evening. There are a few indicators of success. I think 2 are the most obvious ones. One is we can view this whole effort, this whole special election, as successful. Obviously, if Aftyn Behn wins, I don't think I have to explain how winning in an R plus 22 seat would be cataclysmic and would basically upend the entire map as we know it as we head toward 2026. But even in the event that Democrats don't win this race, but overperform to the point where we're looking at a single-digit win for Matt Van Epps on the Republican side, that means that we are seeing at least a 12, 13-point swing to the left. And not only that, it's not like this is some squishy purple district. This is a true red Republican, like a ruby red Republican district. So if Democrats are able to achieve an 11, 12, 13, 14-point swing in a district that is composed mostly of Republicans, then that bodes really poorly as we head toward midterms as well. So I want to try to measure some expectations here because, again, we are talking about an R plus 22 district. This is something that shouldn't even be on the radar for Democrats. And yet the fact that it is, the fact that we have seen so much polling that would indicate that this race is close. I think the last poll that we saw showed Matt Van Epps with a 2-point lead over Aftyn Behn and a 4-point margin of error, which is to say that all of the results fell within that margin of error. The fact that it's so close is a testament to just how dangerous this moment is for Republicans, and that's owed in large part to the fact that the good and the bad of Republicans having taken full control of government is that they have no one to blame in the event that they screw up. There are no Democrats in control of the House. There are no Democrats in control of the White House. Hell, there's not even any liberals in charge of the Supreme Court. And so the Republicans, yes, they own their success, but they also own their failures. And right now we're in a situation where we are watching the entire government not work as it's intended to work. We're watching costs continue to surge. We're watching healthcare get stripped away, food assistance get gutted, whether it's the ACA, whether it's the Medicare as the result of the one big beautiful bill. And so this has been especially problematic in an administration and for a party more broadly that's swept into office amid promises that they're going to protect costs for people. And yet, not only did they fail to lower costs for people, but they've exacerbated those costs. We've seen costs rise on everything. We've seen costs rise on housing, on rent, construction, on groceries, on electronics, on electricity. And so on metric after metric, we're seeing the American people recognize the con that they've been sold at the hands of this administration and the party that's enabled this administration. And so, that was their one mandate to fulfill when they came into office. Trump knew full well what he was doing when he was running on this idea of affordability. He wasn't dumb about it. The problem was he had no intention of actually following through. He had no intention of solving any of the things. He was perfectly content to exploit the pain that people were feeling, and to pin it all on Biden and Kamala Harris. But the reality is, once he got in office, clearly that didn't matter much for him. It's not like he lifted a finger to help any of those people. It's not like he lifted a finger to lower the costs of groceries or construction or housing, whatever it may be. In fact, it was all his own actions that everybody in this country told him we're gonna raise the prices of things by engaging in a trade war, and yet he decided to do it anyway. And it's not like this was some new surprise for him. He tried the same trade war tactics in 2017. That did the same thing. It screwed the farmers over to the point where he had to borrow tax revenue to pay the farmers out. But when he left office, when they weren't getting these welfare checks, these one-off welfare check band-aids from the federal government, they were losing all of their customers. Because even if the prices do go back down, foreign entities that buy our soybeans, buy our beef, are going to recognize that we are not a reliable trading partner. And so they left and they went to Brazil and Argentina and Australia. And it's just gotten worse and worse. So Trump knew full well what he was doing, but he didn't care. He said whatever he needed to say to get power. Now that he's got power, he was like, fuck these people. I don't need to do anything because I've gotten what I need from them. So the problem now is that Republicans are saddled with the fact that they have now broken the promise that they made to the American people at the hands of this administration, at the hands of the party more broadly. And so we're in a moment where in an R+22 district, it's actually close enough that I'm sitting here doing a live stream because we don't know what the results are going to say. If you think that I would have ever done a live stream on any other R+22 seat in the country prior to today, I think you'd be in for a rude awakening. But the fact that we're here right now is a testament to the fact that Republicans have royally screwed themselves with the way that they've kind of offered blind deference, slavish devotion to Donald Trump. And so what we've got here are the results. As soon as they come in, they'll populate here. We'll be able to see, for example, what metrics Aftyn Behn needs to hit in order to win these races. So you can see the little white line here. That is the metric that needs to be hit. For example, if Matt Van Epps wants to win this race, that this is an R plus 41.2. So if we start to see the dots are going to populate, you're going to get a little white dot on this screen. If the white dots come into the left of what the goal is, what the white line is, then that is an overperformance by Aftyn Behn. So we're going to keep a close eye on the county level data as soon as it comes in. Again, that data is coming in just over about 20 minutes from now. And we'll be able to see how many votes are being cast, how many votes we should expect within the entire county. And we'll have all county level information as it comes in. And of course, on the side of the screen as well, we'll have what the markets are looking like. So as of right now, if you look at the data according to Kalshi, it looks like the Republican Party, Matt Van Epps, has a 91% chance of winning this race. If we head over to Polymarket, it is the same differential, 91%. So we'll keep an eye on those. Of course, those are, those can change based on what the actual votes look like. The only thing that matters in this race at the end of the day is what the votes say. So just keep that in mind. And I'm going to reiterate for people who've just joined that success takes two different forms this evening. Success looks like the obvious, which is Aftyn Behn pulls an upset victory that would be cataclysmic in modern politics. It would be the fourth biggest upset, I think, in decades. That would be flipping a seat that is R plus 22. So we would need like a over 22-point swing from the previous election cycle. Obviously, that speaks for itself. But if Aftyn Behn can keep this race to within a single-digit differential, a single-digit margin, I think that is a massive indicator of success as well. Because in that instance, what we've done is taken a ruby red district, so not even a purple district, not a swing seat, but a ruby red district, and showed that even in those districts, we are seeing, if we're talking single digits on an R plus 22 seat, that means a 14-point swing to the left in a red district. That means R plus 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, R plus 14 seats, around the country. Those are suddenly at play, which means that Republicans suddenly have to spend a boatload of money protecting R plus 10, R plus 12, R plus 14 districts. If those are where Democrats are playing, if that's what it looks like across the country in terms of what the possible swing could be, then that changes everything in terms of where Republicans have to spend their money, where they have to be defensive, and consequently, where Democrats can go on offense. Suddenly, it doesn't mean that we're only going for like 10 seats across the country that are supposed to be swing seats. Suddenly, it opens up a whole breadth of other seats that we would have just assumed are going to go red. But if we're seeing ruby red districts like this one suddenly take double-digit swings to the left, then think about what that says for double-digit districts across the entire United States. As we head toward 2026, it means we invest in more places, we run harder in more places. If we have candidates who are dynamic, who are breaking through, or if people are just fed up with what this Republican Party is doing right now, then all of a sudden we have the opportunity to win in places that we would have no business winning in prior to this election cycle. So I think the margin is going to be just as important as the result in this race. So all of which is to say there are different indicators for success, and we're going to keep an eye on top of all of it. So as soon as these first results come in, I'll make sure to bring them to you. We have 20 minutes until the polls close. As I mentioned earlier, once the primary results were returned, it took about 3 minutes after the hour to start getting the first votes to come in. So after the primary, just a few months back, those polls closed at 8 o'clock. We had the first 4,000 votes come in at about 8:03 p.m. So I would expect that we'll see something similar this evening. But of course, that's not guaranteed. So we'll just, we'll keep an eye on everything as the votes come in, and we'll see what everything is looking like. Let's talk about the two candidates. Aftyn Behn, who I interviewed just a few days ago on my channel. And by the way, if you're not yet subscribed on YouTube, if you're not following on Twitch or on Facebook, go ahead and hit the follow or subscribe button. It's a great way to support my work. It is completely free. Aftyn Behn, she is a social worker and a community organizer. She has a bachelor in psychology from the University of Texas at Austin. In 2023, she won a special election to Tennessee's 51st district to be the youngest female representative ever sworn in to the Tennessee House. Matt Van Epps graduated from West Point, the Republican. He served in the military 10 years active duty, was in the Tennessee Army National Guard as lieutenant colonel. He is, of course, endorsed by Donald Trump, and Republicans, including J.D. Vance, including Mike Johnson, have spent the last few days pouring energy, effort, resources, money, time into this race, again, which is a testament to not just Aftyn Behn's strength, but also the dismal position of the Republican Party today. The fact that you need the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, and all these other Republicans to dump money, time, energy, and resources into an R plus 22 district is a testament to the fact that they know that they screwed up, and they know how desperately they need to win this race by a wide margin so that it doesn't just invoke or invite panic as we head toward 2026. Because once people see the revolt that's happening, and the fact that Americans do not just allow Republicans to act with impunity as far as their abuses of power are concerned, that might change the calculus in the House and the Senate. Once people see, hey, we've been blindly deferring to Donald Trump, we've been offering Donald Trump slavish devotion every single day, and all of these Republicans are getting punished for it, maybe that means we don't give him the subservience that he is so desperate for. Maybe we don't just be lapdogs, blind lapdogs for the president, because it's going to be our jobs on the line. And so this race really is existential for Trump, because if it's way closer than they want it to be, if we're looking at a single-digit margin of difference between Behn and Matt Van Epps, then that means that these Republicans are going to start to recognize, hey, yeah, I'm a little bit worried about a mean tweet from Donald Trump, but at the end of the day, if the voters themselves are going to just vote me out because that's what the national environment is showing, and they're that pissed off with our blind deference to Donald Trump, then I got to look out for me. I got to look out for number one ahead of everybody else, and I'm going to start to break with Donald Trump in instances where it's not popular. And by the way, none of the instances that we're seeing right now are popular. Trump is underwater on everything. He's underwater on the economy. He's underwater on immigration, on the trade war, on everything that he has engaged in. He is underwater on, and so this would create some incentive for these Republican officials, whether in the House or the Senate, to know that, hey, I have like a permission structure here to be able to distance myself from Trump, because look how close it is, even in a district that I would have otherwise considered safe. We got about 15 minutes until the first polls close. Once we have those results, those will automatically start to populate onto the screen right next to me. We have automatically updating votes, courtesy of Decision Desk. So as soon as we have any new information, that will automatically be shown to you on the screen next to me. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. Just make sure you tag my name so I can see them. For those who are asking, when do we get returns? The polls close in 15 minutes. During the primary, we saw returns within 3 minutes of the polls closing. So during the primary, polls closed at 8 p.m. We got our first 4,000 votes at 8:03 p.m. So we could be 17, 18 minutes away from seeing our first returns this evening. I'm seeing a comment here that's really helpful. During early voting, 84,356 votes were cast, 20,000 more than the primary. Feeling good about that. That is a good point. We will see. That's a great point. I think higher turnout, we have seen in these special elections that higher turnout usually equates to better performance by Democrats, and it's the Democrats who have been turning out at higher rates in these special elections. Of course, all of these elections are different. But we have seen in these last few special elections in this cycle that when Trump isn't on the ballot, but you have highly engaged voters who do turn out and vote, it's the Democrats who've been overperforming. And we have seen overperformances by about an average of 11 or 12 points throughout the entirety of 2025. And then, of course, in November of 2025 on election day, we saw overperformances by Mikey Sherrill, Abigail Spanberger, by about 15 points from what it was in 2024. So all of which is to say, this has been a very beneficial election cycle for Democrats in 2025 relative to the previous election cycle. Let's see. I'm going to try to get to some more questions here. I'm getting the question. I've gotten this question before, and I'll answer it again here. Have I considered running for political office? No, I would not run for office. I don't think I would ever work in government. I think that the media space is important. I've been a pretty vocal advocate for making sure that we grow the progressive media ecosystem. I've helped a lot of people get into the media space and grow their channels, grow their accounts. And so that is where I think I can be most helpful. And that's the space that I think Democrats and the left more broadly are hurting the most on. So that's where I'll plant myself. Is there any worries about voter interference? I haven't heard any reports or anything like that that would suggest that that voter interference or the DOJ or some paramilitary group are a factor in this race. But of course, if we do hear anything, I'll let you know. But haven't heard anything from that. I speak to Mark Elias regularly. I think I would have, he would have flagged for me if there was any legal hurdles that would prevent some type of accurate election day here. How do I think a Democratic win would affect the House voting calculus? So as far as I know, there is still a cushion big enough that even if Aftyn Behn won, Republicans would still Republicans would still have majority in the House. Let's see. So the margin in the House right now is 219 to 213. So this would make it 214 to 219. Obviously, it would just make a difference in terms of, what this would do is because it would make the margin closer, it would mean that attendance would be an even bigger issue. And Republicans have more representatives, more members of Congress who are running for some other office than Democrats do. I think by double. So more of those Republicans are going to be out on the campaign trail as we head toward the end of this congressional cycle. So you want those people to be there so that Republicans have big enough margins by which they can actually win their votes. If you've got people on the campaign trail because they're running for some other office, then that obviously means that it's going to be increasingly difficult to be able to pass anything, or you got to keep those Republicans off the campaign trail so that they can vote and actually win their votes. And so every Democrat that we can get to pad our side is going to, mean it's closer. If there are votes where there's defections, like, for example, the Epstein vote, where, this discharge petition passed by the skin of its teeth, and that was because there was, 4 Republican defections: Thomas Massie, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And so this is an instance where having such close margins really mattered, because in that case, had there been, one fewer Democrat, for example, then the discharge petition wouldn't pass, because there weren't any other Republicans who were willing to sign the discharge petition. But because the margin was so close and Democrats were able to pick off 4 Republicans, that thing passed. And then ultimately it was just, the number of Republicans who ultimately signed on to the thing was nearly unanimous. So that's an instance where you want those close margins, because when there's tough votes, like, for example, I presume there's going to be tough votes on extending Affordable Care Act subsidies, the more the more close that margin is, the easier it will be to pick those people off. And Mike Johnson doesn't have a lot of votes to play with. But then, of course, the campaign cycle is going to be important too, because those people, come this summer, as we head into the spring, they're going to want to be out campaigning so they can win, their races as they run for governor, as they run for senator, whatever it may be. They're not going to want to be in the House taking votes. They're going to want to be hosting rallies and doing whatever it is, doing fundraisers. So that keeps them off the campaign trail. So either way, this would be a good situation if Aftyn Behn is able to gain one more seat in a ruby red district like this one. We have less than 10 minutes to go here until the polls close. Less than 10 minutes to go before the polls close. Again, as I mentioned before, when the primary voting ended at 8 o'clock Eastern, we had our first votes in at 8:03. So I presume that come 8:03, we may have the first batch of votes here. By the way, as we wait these final few minutes for the polls to close in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District, I would just note that if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, it's a great way to support my work, great way to support independent media. It is 100% free. So if you've not yet subscribed, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can support live streams like this one, as well as my other breaking news videos and interviews that I post on a daily basis. We have 7 minutes to go until the polls close. The site I'm looking at is Decision Desk HQ. I don't think that this one is publicly available, but I've been working with Decision Desk to do election results over the last few cycles. I used them for this past a couple weeks ago, Tuesday's election day, and the general election just a year ago. I'm getting a very important question, and that's asking how Aston is doing. And Aston is my dog, and he's doing great. You will know if Aston is ever not doing well, because my mental health hinges directly, it is directly proportional with how that dog is doing. And he is almost 15 years old. So not great when all of my mental health is riding on the health of a 15-year-old dog. But if he comes into the room, then I'll show him to you. I'm getting the question, if Aftyn wins, Mike Johnson will be out as speaker tonight. Can you explain how that would happen? That wouldn't happen because Republicans would still have the majority in the House. And so there's not an instance where suddenly Democrats would have, suddenly Democrats would have the votes to oust Mike Johnson. But what it would do, as I was mentioning before, is shrink the margin that Mike Johnson has to play with. And so suddenly attendance is going to be a major issue, especially as we head into the campaign cycle. He's not going to want to have to deal with all these members who are going to want to be out on the campaign trail. And also, there's a lot of votes that people are going to want to take that pertain to their district that might break the party line. But, there's a lot of New York Republicans, for example, who know that they're going to be in a lot of trouble if they take certain votes that are intended to benefit predominantly Republican states, for example. So they want every vote of a buffer that they can deal with. 5 minutes away from the polls closing. So if you are tuned in right now, stick around because we should have our first batch of votes in pretty shortly after the polls close. As I mentioned at the top of this video, or the top of this live stream rather, there are a few things that I'm looking at that would constitute a success. Two things that would constitute a success. One is the obvious. Aftyn Behn wins. It would be the fourth biggest upset in terms of the margin from one election cycle to the next that we've seen in decades. So that unto itself would be a massive win. Other than that, if Aftyn Behn can keep the margin between her and Matt Van Epps to a single-digit margin, then I think that is a major indicator of success as well and would be a 5-alarm fire for Republicans as we head toward midterms. Why? This is not some swingy district. This is not a purple district. This is a ruby red Trump district, R plus 22. That means 22 points more conservative than the rest of the nation. If we see an R plus 22 district go to single digits, maybe R plus 9, whatever it may be, that means that we're looking at a 13-point swing to the left in a heavily red district. That means every other district across the country that has an R plus 13 rating or below, R plus 12, 11, 10, 9, pretty big, still pretty Republican districts. All of those are suddenly at play. And again, it's not like this is just some swingy district and so a bunch of Democrats were raring to go. This is a pretty red district. And so if a red district like this one, like Tennessee's 22nd congressional district, can see a roughly 13-point swing if they're able to keep it at single digits, that means a lot of other districts across the country are suddenly at play or at risk in play as we head toward midterms. And so that means a lot of money has to be spent protecting those districts across the country. That is money that Republicans do not want to have to spend. They want to go on offense. They want to keep their money so that they can try and win some of these Senate seats in Michigan, for example. That's where they want to be spending their money, not protecting R plus 10, R plus 11, R plus 12, R plus 13, 14, 15, 16 seats. They want to be spending their money on offensive opportunities, not defending their seats across the country. So we'll keep an eye on the margin. That's going to be just as important as the winner of this election. I saw the question, how many Republicans are retiring as we head toward the midterm cycle. Let me see if I can find that information. I know that just a few days ago we found that that Troy Nehls was retiring. I believe 23 House Republicans have announced that they will not seek re-election. 5 are retiring altogether. 11 are running for governor. 6 are running for Senate, and 1 is running for the state attorney general. So as I mentioned before, when we talk about the margin between the Democrats and the Republicans in the House, yes, Republicans have a slight edge in terms of the number of members, but there are 11 Republicans who are running for governor. They want to be out running for governor. There are 6 Republicans running for Senate. They want to be out running for Senate. There's 1 running for attorney general. That person wants to be running for attorney general. They do not want to be in the House taking votes. And so for comparison, 16 Democrats have announced that they won't seek re-election. But 16 compared to 23 means that Republicans need to keep their attendance way higher, and they have to keep all of those people off the campaign trail. And being able to pick off this seat means that we shrink that margin even more, which means 1 more person who would have been on the campaign trail has to stay in the House so that they can get any legislation done. Okay, it is 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. We now have closed polls in Tennessee. So, as I mentioned before, if we have the first votes coming in, we will see those momentarily. They will automatically update onto this screen. We'll have the total votes for the candidates. We'll also be able to see what the margins that need to be hit are. So I have a list of all of the counties right here, and we can see what the targets are in all of these counties, and whether the actual vote is going to be to the left or to the right of what we expect to see in these counties. So a lot of good data that we'll have to look for as we start to get these votes rolling in. As you can see on the side of the screen, we have the markets right now. Kalshi markets show that Republicans have a 91% chance of winning. At the end of the day, what matters most is not what the betting markets are suggesting. It is what the votes themselves are saying, and those are going to come in soon. As I mentioned, when we had the primary just a few months ago and the polls closed at 8 p.m., the first votes dropped at 8:03. So in theory, if it's a similar counting process as we had during the primary, in about 2 minutes now, we should get the first batch of votes. Do I think that House Republicans should push for a motion to vacate the speaker so they can get back to actual legislative work? I think that if they do a motion to vacate with a margin as slim as they have, they will never get back to work and they will never be able to agree on a speaker. So I think it would be a disaster. Look, if they want to do it, I'm all for it, but I think it would be a disaster for them, strategically speaking, for anybody to stand up and do a motion to vacate. We may be moments away from the first dropped ballots. We will have automatic updates as soon as any votes are counted. In theory, we could have our first votes being counted in just a few moments from now. But the polls are officially closed in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. We have Aftyn Behn and Matt Van Epps. $84,000 votes were already cast. Over 50% of Tennesseans vote early. I have to note, again, if we do see Aftyn Behn win or even keep this to within a few percentage points, that will be a titanic upset. And it looks like we have our first batch of votes in. So we have 1,700 votes in a little tiny county up in the north of Tennessee here. So this is a very Republican county, one of the most Republican counties in the entire state. We have another one, Wayne County. And it looks like right now, the votes that are coming in are slightly more Republican than the previous election cycle. We don't have full votes yet. And again, these are very small counties. So we're talking about some of the smallest counties in the state. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these very Republican counties get more Republican and some of the swingier or larger counties get more Democratic. But this is what we're looking at right now. Not even 3,000 votes in yet. We should expect somewhere in the ballpark of several 100,000 votes to be cast in this election cycle. Let me see how many were cast in total. So in the primary, about 67,000 votes in total were cast. We've already had 84,000 early votes cast. So this is a tiny fraction, but at least we have some early votes in right now. And so we'll keep an eye on these numbers as they continue to come in. But I had a feeling that we would see our first votes come in, and they came in at exactly the same time that votes came in during the primary, which is 3 minutes after the hour. We're not even at 2% of the votes in. So for those who are worried about what these very small, very Republican, very rural counties are showing, I would not be too concerned. A couple more votes that came in, another percent. Again, Houston County, slightly more Republican than the goal here. It's about 2 points more Republican. But this is the smallest county smallest county in the district. So again, some of these small counties are going to be certainly more Republican than some of the larger ones. All right, we have some early votes from Perry County here. This one is skewing a little bit more Democratic, 3 points more Democratic. But again, difficult to really infer anything, draw any conclusions from some of these early numbers here. So let's go to this chart. We're still at about not even 3% of the total vote in. Markets are holding strong. Poly market is still showing 91% for Republicans. Right now, with just under 3% of the vote in, we're looking at Matt Van Epps with 70% of the vote, Aftyn Behn with 26. Again, we're only looking at 4,500 votes. We have no votes yet from the major Democratic population centers. Remember, we're dealing with counties right now that have 5,000 voters, 5,000 voters, 10,000, 10,000. Once we look at Davidson County, it's got 124,000 voters. Dixon County, 37,000 voters. Williamson County, 63,000 voters. Montgomery County, 150,000 voters. So a lot of votes left to be counted. I would not draw any conclusions from what we've seen thus far. Let's look. Do we have any information from Wayne County? So interestingly, in 2024, if we look at Wayne County right here, the Republicans won Wayne County by 86%. So right now, they're running at about 78%. So 9 points back right now from what the 2024 margin was. Just something to keep an eye on. Again, these are very small counties and it's very early in the returns process, but Wayne County saw 86% for Republicans and now they're at 78%. So not hitting the numbers that they need to be hitting in those places. Let's go to Houston County now. Houston County, Matt Van Epps has 67%. In 2024, Republicans had 76%, so running about 9 points back. In Perry County, Matt Van Epps is running at 69%. In 2024, Republicans had 81%. All interesting numbers to keep in mind as we continue to watch this evening progress. Again, way too early to give any hot takes, but some of these counties are seeing 7, 8, 9, 10 points back from where it was in previous election cycles. And of course, it's going to be important to see what happens in the population centers. We have the first votes out of Montgomery. Aftyn Behn is leading 50.8 to 47.9. So that brings the total to almost 20% of the vote in, with Aftyn Behn just trailing Matt Van Epps about 44 to 54. So that's 10 points behind. Let's look at another county. Hickman County, Matt Van Epps has 70%. In 2024, Republicans ran 78%. So falling 8% behind what it was in 2024. And remember, these are heavily Republican counties. Good news is they seem to be counting pretty quickly here. Again, we have about 17% of the vote in right now. Montgomery County. This first batch of votes in Montgomery County, Aftyn Behn is winning by 2.9 points. That is an improvement of over 20 points from these ballots in the 2024 House election. A 20-point improvement in Montgomery here. Just some general numbers that we can look at. Stewart County was plus 61, was R plus 61 in 2024. Now it's R plus 40. That's a 21 point swing to the left. Houston County was R plus 54. Now it's 36. Perry County was R plus 63. Now it's 41. Wayne County is 74. Now it's 59. So these are pretty broad swings that we're seeing right now. In some cases, roughly 20 points. We got another batch of votes here. Let's see where. Okay, so as you can see, we are waiting for votes from the population centers. We do not have any votes from Williamson County, Robertson County, Davidson County. Those are where all the big swath of votes that are going to determine this race are going to come from. Go to Cheatham County. Let's see. Democrats overperforming, I believe it's pronounced Chatham or Cheatham County. Matt Van Epps is at 62%. Republicans in 2024 were at 70%. Let's go back to the main map up here. 27% of the vote in right now. We're seeing some pretty broad swings. Do we have early vote in from Nashville yet? Okay. overperforming in Montgomery County. Still 27% of the vote. The good news is these results are coming in pretty quickly. Again, for those who are watching, if you're not yet subscribed to this channel and you'd like to support this live stream, completely free, always will be. The best way to do so is just to subscribe. Right now, we are looking at roughly a 16-point difference. Again, this is an R plus 22 district. We're looking at a 16-point difference, but without any of the major population centers. So we don't have all of the results in from Robertson County, Williamson County, Davidson County, and we have half the vote in from Montgomery County, where Behn is overperforming. Still 27% of the vote. Good news is we are 18 minutes into the hour and we already have 27%. So hopefully we will see some quick movement here this evening. We should be moments away from this updating as well. Until we see how some of these larger counties are turning out, it's still uncertain because a lot of the results that we have are about half of the results from these smaller rural counties. And we're still waiting again for Williamson County, which has 63,000 votes. Robertson County, 50,000 votes, and Davidson County, which has 124,000 votes, as well as the other half of Montgomery County's 150,000 votes. So those population centers are going to determine what the margins are and who the winners are of this election cycle. Still about 27% of the vote in right now. What's really going to determine who wins is what the Nashville turnout was for election day votes. So there were 84,000 early votes that were cast. Depending on what the breakdown is from major urban population centers like Nashville, that's going to determine where this race goes. Interestingly, if you look at the betting markets, the Republicans have dropped from 91 to 77. 77 is still good odds for Republicans, but 91 to 77 in the course of a couple of minutes suggests that this is a closer race than Republicans had anticipated, I think. I'm trying to be as responsible and cautiously optimistic as I can, measured, and frankly, I have no reason to be excited or disappointed. There's still so many votes left to count. As you can see, we have no votes yet from Williamson County, no votes from Davidson, no votes from Robertson, and half of the votes in from Montgomery County. Davidson is going to be especially important here, though. Still 27% of the vote in right now. I wait here with bated breath along with the rest of you. As soon as we have any more votes that drop, they will automatically update. The New York Times is reporting that they project this race will be Matt Van Epps defeating Aftyn Behn by about 2.9 percentage points, and that would be a 20-point shift to the left. If that happens, and again, this is just a projection by the New York Times, we have seen the extent to which the New York Times needle has been dead wrong in the past, but I just want to give you some news in terms of what, one projection is looking like. That would be a massive red flag for the Republican Party. It would mean that Democrats wouldn't get this seat, but if we're seeing 20-point shifts in ruby red districts like Tennessee's 7th congressional district, that was R plus 22, that would mean that any district that is R plus 19 or below is up for grabs as we head toward 2026, because these are Republican voters. This is pretty representative of a true ruby red district in the United States. And if this district is seeing roughly a 20-point swing to the left, think about what that will mean for other districts all across the country. R plus 10, R plus 15, R plus 20. So that means Republicans will have to pour money into other districts across the entire United States. It means that money, which is not unlimited, is taken away from offensive opportunities and goes toward defensive opportunities. And Democrats, of course, can run offensive opportunities. They can run everywhere. It would also free that money up for them to run some of these bigger Senate races in states across the country. So if we do see the projection from the New York Times pan out, I would not consider that a disappointment. I would consider that a massive overperformance and sign of life for Democrats as we head toward 2026. Again, we're waiting right now for the election day numbers. Right now, Aftyn Behn is running ahead of her vote goals, but there was obviously a big push by Republicans. Remember, Trump was tweeting about this. J.D. Vance was talking about this. Mike Johnson went to the district. Trump called into the district, and so that was all to juice turnout on election day. If Matt Van Epps can run ahead of his goal for election day, then that would whittle away at the advantage that Aftyn Behn holds right now. So you can see in some of these larger counties, for example, Matt Van Epps needs to have a 23-point margin. Right now, he's not hitting those numbers. This is a D plus 1.3 difference. So that means Aftyn Behn is running 1.3 points ahead of what Matt Van Epps needs. So that's good news in this county, for example. If we look on Montgomery County, same deal. To be able to win this district, Matt Van Epps needs to win by a 44.6 margin. He's not hitting that number. He's hitting 41.5. So again, all of this suggests that right now Aftyn Behn is running ahead of the number she needs, but it's going to come down to these election day turnout and to see how the participation of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Mike Johnson, all these other national figures boosted turnout for Republicans, because right now the Republican Van Epps is not hitting the numbers that he needs to hit in some of these larger counties. Another one, Dixon County, 37,000 voters. Matt Van Epps needs to hit 28.8, not hitting those numbers. He's hitting 25.3. So Davidson is going to be very telling once we get those numbers. But again, we've been stuck at about 27.5% for a little while now. So as soon as those numbers come in, I will make sure to bring them to you. I'm getting the question, which votes are these? We don't know if these are early votes or election day votes. So we don't know if, for example, the first votes that were counted were election day votes, which I presume are going to be redder. We don't know if they were mail ballots because they don't segment them out in Tennessee. So we're kind of left in the dark until we see more returns come in terms of knowing what the partisan breakdown of these votes is, because we don't know where they came from. We do know, for example, that election day votes are going to be more Republican because more Republicans come out on election day. We know that mail-in ballots are going to be bluer because more Democrats make use of these mail ballots. Problem is we don't know which ones drop first. So all we have to do is kind of wait for the next round of votes to hit. And once we have 100% reporting, that's when we'll know, what the numbers are. But unfortunately, we don't know whether the vote totals are going to become redder or bluer because we don't know where these votes are from. I hope that's helpful and makes sense for people. I wish they would say first votes counted are early ballots. This way we know, okay, these are going to be much bluer, but is she hitting the numbers that she needs to hit? And is election day turnout big enough for Matt Van Epps that he's hitting the numbers he needs to hit? Unfortunately, we just don't have that information. Tennessee doesn't come out and say in advance which votes they're counting first. In total, for those who are just tuning in, we have about a quarter of all votes that have been counted right now. I would not draw too much from this because we're still missing major population centers. We've only got half of a bunch of rural counties. We don't have many of the votes in the urban population centers. An interesting data point is that the Cauchy markets have dropped another 4 points for the Republicans, so now it's down to 73%. Again, 73% is pretty good odds if you are the Republicans, but I would note that this is 73 down from 91%. So it's telling that the votes are certainly closer than I think Matt Van Epps and Republicans would like them to be. Again, still waiting for votes here. We've got half of the votes still out from Montgomery County, and then Williamson, Robertson, and Davidson are still not returned yet. And as you can see from the rest of the chart, the reported numbers, we only have about half of the votes in from all of these smaller rural counties across the district. So a lot of counting still left to be done. Hopefully we get another batch of votes coming in soon. And again, I want to note that we don't know the voting method for the results that have been returned yet. So we don't know whether these are more democratic. We don't know whether these are mail ballots. We don't know whether they're more election day heavy. We don't know that they're more red. So because we don't have that information, we're a little bit in the dark in terms of what comes next. We can't really predict what's going to come next. We just have to wait for the numbers to present themselves. Still, the same amount of votes that we've had thus far, a little over 27%. Oh, looks like we got a big batch of votes here. And Aftyn Behn surges into the lead, 55 to 43%, with 41% reporting. So let's see. This is Davidson. Aftyn Behn doing 14 points better in this major population center than she needs to be doing. And again, we have a little over half of the votes that we're waiting for in that county as well. But a good result for Aftyn Behn. And I believe we've also had, let's see, we've had the Montgomery votes already. Those Davidson votes just came in. Also not hitting the targets that he needs in Dixon County. Polymarket still has Matt Van Epps at 91. Cauchy, Matt Van Epps at 73%. A lot of votes left to count here. And again, here's my warning, and I have to repeat this. We don't know which votes we don't know which voting method has been counted yet. If, for example, the votes that just came in Davidson County are early votes and election day votes are much redder, then we'll see this 84 to 14 margin shrink a little bit, and we'll see it normalize a little bit. But all of that depends on what the next batch of votes is. Again, we don't know which votes are reporting by which vote method, so all of it kind of still hangs up in the air. But right now, Aftyn Behn is meeting her targets. I would presume the first votes in were the early votes because those were already cast. Presumably they had some leg up in terms of being able to count those. And so I presume this will be the bluest it will be. But again, all of that remains to be seen. Robertson County is a good showing for Matt Van Epps. He needed to hit 28. He's actually beating that by almost 7 points. So that's a big population center. He's doing better there than he needs to. Of course, that's offset by the fact that Davidson County, Aftyn Behn is doing 14 points better than she needs to. We still have half of the votes pending in both of those districts, a little less than half. And what those votes tell us is going to be much more important than the first batch. I presume that the incoming votes that we're going to get out of these major population centers are definitely going to tighten a little bit as they continue to count election day votes, which obviously are the last votes to come in. The New York Times is estimating that Matt Van Epps is, at least for right now, heading toward a 3.3 margin victory. 3.3%. Remember, this is an R plus 22 district. So I want to measure expectations here. Even in the event that Aftyn Behn doesn't win this race, if we're able to see a margin shrink from 22 down to 3, any single digit number is a win, a metaphorical win. Any single digit number is a major cause for celebration. But to see it possibly be a 3-point margin would be pretty cataclysmic for the GOP. Because that would show that all of these other districts across the country that are R plus 20 and below are suddenly at risk, suddenly in play for Democrats. Right now, Behn is leading with a 6.3% lead over Matt Van Epps, just under 50% counted. So moving pretty quickly. Polls have been closed for about 40 minutes here, and we've already got about half of the vote. So hopefully that bodes well, and hopefully we get a big return in the next few minutes so that we can keep this process moving along. It's been going pretty quickly thus far. One more reminder for those who are watching right now, if you'd like to support this live stream, doesn't cost you anything to do so, but the best way to help me out is just to subscribe to this channel. Completely free, great way to support my work, great way to support independent media more broadly. So you can hit the subscribe button anywhere on this screen, and I appreciate it. So let's see Davidson County here. So it looks like Davidson County is about 70%, and this is going to be largely the early vote because those are the votes that are counted first. She's meeting her margins that she needs to meet in Davidson County. As you can see, she's beating them by about 14 points. So if she can keep up similar margins for the Election Day vote, that would be good news for Aftyn Behn. Again, all depends on what Republicans were able to do on Election Day with turnout. Were they able to turn out a lot of people with these last-minute injections of funding, with these last-minute appearances by Trump and Vance and Mike Johnson and all these other national Republicans? Or were Democrats able to keep meeting the margins that they met with the early vote numbers? All remains to be seen. Again, I want to caveat that who was the Republican that vacated this seat that caused this election to happen in the first place, he won the early vote in Montgomery County. This is a Republican, won the early vote in Montgomery County by 18 points. Right now, Aftyn Behn, the Democrat, is winning the vote by 3 points. So that's already a 21-point swing, which is the numbers that Behn needs to hit. We're talking about an R plus 22 district. So it's still continues to be tight. According to Kalshi, the Republicans' margin went up from about 70, I can't remember what it was, 77% to about 87%. But again, all of it depends on what the turnout numbers look like in some of these more populous counties. We got a few votes that just came in. Let's see let's see if we can tell where they came from. Probably some of these smaller rural counties out here. We're just under half of the vote in for Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. Again, for those who are just tuning in, we are at just under 50% of the vote in right now. We can see, based on some of these charts, that Aftyn Behn, given the votes that have been cast thus far, which are largely going to be the early votes, Aftyn Behn is hitting the numbers that she needs to hit. However, the race is still close. You can see that it's 51 to 47, so a 4-point margin between the two. Behn has to make sure that the Election Day votes, which are going to skew more red, are not enough to overcome the margin that she's currently winning by. So because you can see right here in all of these reported numbers that we're just over half reporting in most of these counties, except for Williamson. We don't have any numbers yet from Williamson. Because we're only at half reporting in these counties, we don't know what the election day turnout is going to look like relative to the early vote turnout. We all know early vote turnout is mostly composed of mail ballots. Those are going to skew more blue, and that election day vote is going to be more red. And so right now she's hitting the numbers that she needs to hit, but the early votes counted are going to skew more blue. So as these rural counties and even as the urban counties continue to show up more voters, whether she has a wide enough buffer, a big enough margin, or whether Republicans turned out enough people on election day will determine who actually wins this race. So unfortunately, I can't give much information right now other than to say stay tuned because, they're counting the votes pretty quickly and we're at 48% right now. And hopefully we get some complete counties that are reporting soon. If anybody's having any issues with the audio, try refreshing YouTube. That should help the problem. Again, for those just tuning in, Aftyn Behn in the lead right now, 48% reporting. Close race, 49% reporting right now, 50.8 to 48. And we're going to see these margins shrink as some of these rural counties where Matt Van Epps has a wider lead as they report their votes where he was already leading, and especially their election day votes where he'll be leading by a wider margin. What matters is what happens, for example, in Davidson County, when the other, roughly 60,000, 50,000 votes come in. All right, we just got a big batch of votes. Williamson, those votes came in. They are skewing just slightly more Democratic than the goal that Matt Van Epps needs. Less than a point more Democratic. That's 56% of the vote in right now. So Aftyn Behn leads by a tenth of a point. Very, very close here. Kalshi has this race at 97% for Matt Van Epps right now. Again, all of that is going to depend on what these final votes look like. Right now, you can see Matt Van Epps has retaken the lead, 49.5 to 49.3, so he's leading by 0.2 of a point. Everything matters. What matters is what the rest of these reporting votes look like. especially in terms of Davidson and Montgomery County, whether Aftyn Behn can hold on to the lead that she's holding on to right now, or whether there will be enough turnout for Matt Van Epps to overcome the margin that he needs. Again, everything is going to be about Election Day turnout right now. Importantly, we have no call yet on this race. With 60% of the vote in, Matt Van Epps is just leading Aftyn Behn by 0.3 of a point. All eyes on two major counties, Davidson and Montgomery. Davidson about 58% of the vote in, Montgomery 61% of the vote in. So a lot of votes still that we're still waiting on in that benefit both candidates here. You can see Aftyn Behn, we're waiting on about 42% of the vote in Davidson County, where she's leading by a 70-point margin. Montgomery County, we're still waiting on about 39% of the vote. Bain's leading by a two-point margin. But then we have other counties that are beneficial for Matt Van Epps. Robertson County, we're still waiting on about 47% of the vote. I'm not going to try to say that. Cheatham, and Williamson. And of course, those percentages will change based on the early day vote. So I presume, the election day vote. So I presume that, these margins that say Behn 70.4 will shrink once we have redder votes that come in that account for the election day votes. Van Epps leading by 0.6 of a point right now. So it is decidedly close in this race. New York Times is reporting that they are projecting a 4.1% Republican margin to finish off this race. Again, if we're in a position where we see an R plus 22 district turn into an R plus 4 district, that means that we're seeing 18-point swings in a district that is not even purple. If we're seeing an 18-point swing in a ruby red district less than a year out from midterms, that is a 5-alarm fire for Republicans. It puts a lot of seats at play. It puts a lot of these gerrymanders that they engaged in at play, because remember, every time that you want to gerrymander a seat, you have to take from other districts so that you can bolster the districts that you're trying to draw. That means that the previous districts become weaker, the new districts become weaker, and you may very well be drawing a dummy mander, especially if we're in an environment where we're seeing 14 or 18-point swings to the left. %61% of the vote reporting. What matters here is how many votes actually come in Davidson County. This is Davidson County is where Nashville is. There needs to be a massive turnout, and it needs to be at a rate commensurate with what we're seeing right now for Behn to pull this one out. Even still, already massively impressive that we are in a situation where an R plus 22 district is as close as it is right now, 0.7 of a point away. As these votes whittle down, again, victory takes two forms this evening. One, obviously, if Aftyn Behn herself wins. But second, if it is as close as we're already thinking it's going to be. Because if we do see Matt Van Epps win by 3-4 points in an R plus 22 district, that means that suddenly R plus 18 districts across the country are going to be in play for Democrats. That means Republicans have to spend money there. That means they can't spend money on offensive opportunities. It means suddenly somebody in an R plus 10 seat, an R plus 12, 14 seat, maybe your district that was redrawn to gerrymander Democrats out of power, that took votes away from another district, making that one R plus 7 or 8 or 9. Those seats all become at play. So we'll see what the margin is at the end of this thing. Decision Desk has not called this race. They continue to count these numbers. But either way, the numbers that we're seeing right now suggest a massive, massive overperformance in what should have been absolutely safe territory for Democrats, and what signals a really rocky road moving forward for Republicans. So right now, with almost 62% of the vote reporting, we're looking at a 1.3% difference in the two candidates. All eyes on Davidson County right now. Remember, Aftyn Behn has a 70-point margin in that county. Those are going to be composed primarily of the early votes, which of course skew more blue. Once the election day votes hit, that's going to be a major factor for all these counties, because these early votes are already counted. The 84,000 votes that were cast early are already counted. We're into the election day votes, especially in these counties where we have like Decatur, where we're already basically, fully counted. Perry County fully counted. Houston County almost fully counted. These are these smaller rural counties. So those are already accounting for the election day votes. But remember, election day votes are going to be more red. And so what matters is that in Davidson County, which includes Nashville, in Montgomery County, that the margins are wide enough to compensate for the fact that we are going to see very red ballots coming in as they start to count election day ballots. And that's bearing itself out. Almost 64%, so almost 2/3 of the vote counted. And it's looking like Matt Van Epps has a 3-point lead. We are still waiting, as I said, for Davidson County and Montgomery County's election day ballots to be counted. No call yet. from Decision Desk. Again, as we wait for these votes to come in, if you are not yet subscribed to this channel and you'd like to support my work, support these live streams, I'll host them anytime we have election returns coming up. I also do breaking news coverage and interviews on a daily basis. So if you'd like to support my work, it's completely free. The best way to do that is to hit the subscribe button on this channel. And if you'd like to, hit the notification bell. This way you're notified as soon as I go live. So in some of these more rural counties, we can see that Matt Van Epps is actually hitting the numbers that he needs to hit and then some. So Stewart County, for example, small rural county, he needed to hit R plus 42. He's hitting R plus 51. In Robertson County, he needed to hit R plus 28. He's beating that by 12 points. So, Aftyn Behn has a boon right now in Davidson County. She's beating her margin by 14 points. But everything kind of is dependent on what those election day ballots are going to look like, because that's going to whittle that margin down from 70 points to something a little lower. The big question is how much lower. But right now, we're looking at a pretty decent 5.5 point margin that she'll have to make up. Race has not been called by Decision Desk yet. The thing that we should be looking for, two signs of I don't want to say victory, because a victory is a victory, but if Aftyn Behn keeps this to single digits, that will be a huge coup for Democrats. Almost 70% of the vote reporting right now. Still waiting on those Davidson numbers. It looks like Montgomery had a big batch of votes come in that skewed heavily for Van Epps, and it flipped that district from Aftyn Behn plus 2.2 to Van Epps plus 3.9. So those are those election day ballots, those red election day ballots coming in and getting counted. And he's beating the number that he needs to beat by about 5 points right now. And it looks like they just called the race. So Decision Desk has called the race for Matt Van Epps. Right now we're looking at 46, 47, 7-point margin. Remember, we don't have the votes yet for Montgomery. The race has been called for Republican Matt Van Epps, but as I've been saying this entire time, the important thing to look at right now is not just whether or not Aftyn Behn wins this race, but almost more importantly, what the margin in this race is. Because if we see a single-digit margin in what is normally an R plus 22 district, that means that all of these other districts across the country that, that are R plus 5, R plus 10, R plus 15. That means 5 points more conservative than the rest of the nation, 10 points more conservative than the rest of the nation, 15 points more conservative than the rest of the nation. Every district has a designation for how much more democratic or conservative it is than the rest of the nation. That's why you'll often see R plus 10 or D plus 2, whatever it may be. That shows how much more conservative. If we're seeing a swing that is maybe 15 points based on whatever the final outcome of this race, 15 points more, to the left, then that means all of those districts that are R plus 15 or below, so R plus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, are suddenly at risk, suddenly in play for Democrats as we head toward 2026. So something to keep in mind as we await the final margin in this race. It is not just the fact that Matt Van Epps won. I think we expected him to win in what was ultimately an R plus 22 district. The fact that we were considering this is a testament to the weakness of Republicans right now. But when we see what that margin ultimately turns out to be, that's going to be really instructive in terms of which districts are at play as we head toward 2026. And again, one more quick ask. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel and you'd like to support my work, support this live stream, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Completely free, but it's a great way to support my work. Gotta say I'm disappointed that this race was called for Matt Van Epps. But again, I don't think the story here is necessarily that a Republican won in a district that Donald Trump won by 22 points. I think the story here is that it is this close in what should have been an absolute blowout. Right now, 71% of the vote is in, and we're still looking at, a 7.7% difference. And that doesn't even include what I presume are a lot of votes remaining in Davidson County, which is home to Nashville. So a lot of votes still left to be counted. We have about 42% of the votes in a did I get that right? Yeah, no, that's correct. 42% of the vote. So maybe we're looking at 40,000, 50,000 votes still remaining to be counted there. But we'll keep an eye as they continue to bring to report these votes, what that margin turns into. Again, that number will widen as they continue to record all of the votes in some of those rural counties, and then it'll shrink again once we get votes from Nashville area, which is to say Davidson County. What I presume is going to be the biggest consequence of this is that we are going to see a lot of retirements from Republican members who may have thought they were in, their cushy R plus 10 seats, their cushy R plus 12, R plus 14, R plus 16, even R plus 18. And suddenly they don't want to have to get on the phones, raise money, run a difficult race, recognizing the political climate that we're in right now, and they're going to retire because they don't want to deal with it. They had an easy go, but if we're in an environment where seats are swinging 15 points to the left, 18 points to the left, you think a lot of these people want to deal with that? I promise you that in the coming weeks, we're going to see more Republican retirements, which means then they also lose the incumbency advantage. That means you have to spend more money. So not only are you spending, if you're Republicans, are you going to have to spend money defending seats that they shouldn't need to defend, because let's be honest, if you're in an R plus 20 seat, you should just be able to coast to victory, but you're also spending money introducing yourself to the voters. And so you lose that incumbency advantage, and that costs money as well. So in these instances, it is going to turn out to be a very expensive night for these Republicans. Thank you, by the way, for those who are tuning in and watching this coverage along with me. We've been going at it for about 2 hours now. Have covered the entirety of these returns, and I'll stick with it as soon as we get more votes reported. But look, I understand that people are disappointed. The fact that right now we are looking at an R plus 22 seat that is about a little over 7 points difference is an absolute coup for Democrats as we head toward a midterm cycle where, if we're seeing seats swing 15 points to the left, that is a bad environment for Republicans to run in. So I promise you we will see retirements in the coming days and weeks. All right, we just got a bunch more votes here. Looks like those were the Davidson votes. Slightly shrunk her margin from 70 to 64.5, but still a pretty big haul. There's still more votes to be counted. Now there's 3/4 of the vote in from Davidson County, but you can see that shrunk Matt Van Epps' margin to about 4.9 points. Again, R plus 22 district right now at R plus 17.1. Sorry, 17-point swing, R plus 5. So it's a 17-point swing to the left. The hardest part of these live streams is not talking for 2, 4, 6, 8 hours. It is doing math. I'm not even kidding. The part that scares me the most about doing live streams is having to do basic subtraction in front of people. Would not recommend. Right now, New York Times is forecasting a 6.5% lead for Matt Van Epps at the end of this. Right now, we're at 78% reporting. Remember, we still have a lot of votes left to count in Davidson County. That's Nashville. You can see from this chart that most of the votes from these smaller rural counties have already been fully reported or close to fully reported. So not a whole lot of upside left for Van Epps, but at the same time, not a ton of upside left for Aftyn Behn, which is why they've called the race. But we are looking at probably a few percentage points. Again, New York Times is predicting somewhere in the range of 6-point lead for Matt Van Epps. And again, any Republicans who are celebrating, do so at their own risk, because if you're celebrating a single-digit win in an R plus 22 district, man, it might feel okay in Tennessee's 7th congressional district, but there are a lot of districts across the country where the margin is much tighter than that. %80 of the vote in, we are at 6.1% lead for Matt Van Epps. You'll see a lot of these smaller counties that have, half to 70 to 80% of the vote in. Those will continue seeing a small number of ballots trickle in. Those will largely be offset by the ballots that are remaining in Nashville. But this may be roughly the margin that we see when all is said and done. Again, the major population center here, Nashville, will offset a lot of the votes from the rural counties. And by the way, we're looking at a gerrymandered district. Like, the fact that Nashville is not going to have representation in Congress because because the district was gerrymandered and all of these Nashville votes were diluted with all of these rural votes, is what gerrymandering looks like in action. And so the people of Nashville will not have representation because Tennessee Republicans decided to gerrymander this seat, and this is what that looks like, where you have, the people of Nashville who vote for a candidate by a 65-point margin, and those people don't get representation in Congress because all of that vote was diluted with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 other counties. That is insane. .8 points, 18.5% remaining. But we're looking roughly in the 6-point margin in terms of what we can expect. Thank you, by the way, to those who've donated. I appreciate that. Very helpful. It helps me and my team, but certainly not required in the slightest. The best way to support my work is to subscribe to this channel. If you're not yet subscribed, that's the best way. It's completely free, and I'd really appreciate it. Oh, I think my dog is here. No, unfortunately not. Wishful thinking. All right, 85% of the vote in. That margin is about 8 points. Let's see. We are still waiting for all of those votes from Nashville, but Matt Van Epps' margin will continue to tick up as these heavily Republican counties continue to count all of their votes, continue to report all of their votes. That will be offset by the Davidson County vote, which is Nashville, but that won't be enough to completely undo what we've seen. There was about 52% turnout in this race, as I'm seeing, so pretty good for a small off-year election. New York Times is predicting a 7-point margin. Again, if we go from R plus 22 to R plus 7, that will mean a 15-point swing to the left. That would be a great performance for Democrats, especially as we head toward midterms. A 15% overperformance would be in line with what we saw in New Jersey. It'd be in line with what we saw in Virginia. We've got about 14% of the vote remaining. Why wasn't there a bigger voter turnout? This was actually very high for a special election turnout. And in fact, when you have higher turnout in these special elections, it's lower turnout races with high information voters, highly engaged voters, highly enthusiastic voters that have voted better for Democrats this election cycle. So, in these special elections where we've seen 30, 40% turnout, Democrats have been winning those. We're in 52% territory. That means it's a highly nationalized race, high turnout. That's why in a race, where it's R plus 22, it's closer than if there was only 30% turnout. Those were highly engaged voters, highly enthusiastic voters, people that want to see some change, and that would have voted better for Aftyn Behn in this scenario. But once we start seeing higher turnout in these special elections, that's when the race can become more nationalized and less of an outlier. Okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to answer some questions while we wait for these final votes to trickle in. The good news from this, we have 90, almost 93% of the vote in now. It probably means that we got the Davidson votes. Yes. So Nashville's votes are in. That margin shrunk slightly, as we expected it would, because we would get the election day votes, which are going to skew redder than the mail-in ballots. The margin is now down to 3.3%, and that likely means that when we wait for the rest of the ballots to come in to bring the rest of these counties up to full reporting, that margin is going to continue to expand in Matt Van Epps' favor. But, I mean, again, here we are with 93% of the vote reporting. We're looking at a 3.3% difference in an R plus 22 district. I would say that is a fantastic night for Democrats, a bad night for Republicans, and an even worse night for a lot of those other Republicans across the country who are considering whether it's worth it for them to engage in another election cycle where the environment is showing Democrats overperforming by 15, 16 points, 17 points. All of these seats that are R plus 10 suddenly at risk, R plus 15 at risk. That means that Democrats, if we see this same overperformance hold as we head toward midterms, it's not only bodes well for the House, but a lot of these Senate races it'll bode well for as well. Remember, it's 47 to 53 in the Senate. We have a lot of competitive seats that are pickup opportunities for Democrats, including I believe it's Maine. Let's see. Let's find out the major pickup opportunities in the Senate. um, okay, North Carolina and Maine. Susan Collins, of course, is a historically weak candidate right now. Tom Tillis is retiring out of North Carolina. Those are two pickup opportunities. And then, of course, in Ohio, a great recruit with Sherrod Brown. And so those are three. And then we would have to win one of the following four: Texas, Florida, Alaska, Iowa. All of those are going to be obviously tough pickup opportunities. But if we see a national environment where Democrats are overperforming by 15 points, then we may very well see, if someone like Mary Peltola runs in Alaska, that may be a pickup opportunity. If we see strong candidates out of Iowa, where the farmers are getting absolutely killed right now because of this trade war, that might be a pickup opportunity. So a lot remains to be seen in terms of what the Senate map might look like. But, if these results are indicative of what we expect to see, a year from now, 11 months from now, then that is a bad national environment for Republicans to have to run in. So again, I know that people are going to look at these results and be disappointed, but with 95% reporting right now, we see a 4-point difference in an R+22 seat. That is a coup for Democrats and signals signals a rough road ahead for Republicans. We do have a dog here. Okay. So we have the emotional support animal that everybody could rely on if you were especially disappointed seeing tonight's results. But look, I know I've repeated this, and it's worth repeating. This is a good result. This is a great result for Democrats. It should not be this close. It shouldn't be in the ballpark of this close. What I had thought heading into tonight was, if we can keep it in single digits, meaning less than 10 points, that would be a major opportunity, a major, that would be a win as far as I'm concerned. Even if it's not an actual win, that would be a win as far as these election results are concerned. The fact that we're looking at these results right now and it's less than 5 points. Less than 5 points. I told you math is not, I'm not good at math. Did I get that right? Roughly 5 points. I don't like 47, 48, 49, 50, 51.1. Okay, so 4.8 points, I think, if I'm counting that correctly. The fact that we're seeing, an R+22 district 4.8 points, less than 5 points away, I think is a massive, massive reason to celebrate these wins. Unfortunately, we won't have Aftyn Behn in Congress, which sucks because she's young, dynamic, good at social media. Her politics are great. But you know what? We're going to have young, dynamic, politically astute candidates across the country. I hope that a lot of those candidates are going to be running in primaries against Democrats who have been coasting along. I think that, in terms of how to fix the Democratic brand, a lot of that is going to come just from running people who who are better suited to meet this moment with the urgency that it deserves, who are better suited for the digital environment that we live in right now, and frankly, who better relate to the candidates the constituents in their districts, because a lot of these people are way wealthier than the constituents that they represent, are older than the constituents they represent, and so it would be nice to have a Democratic Party that is going to be more reflective of the people who actually vote for them. We are at this 95 and above point. So at this point, we're going to see, more results trickle in. You can see most of this this county map is fully reporting. A couple smaller counties that don't yet have full reporting, maybe 4 of them. We're looking at this name is gonna haunt me. Cheatham County. If somebody could just let me know in the comments how to pronounce Cheatham, that would be helpful. How you doing, buddy? We're also waiting on a little bit of reporting from Hickman County, Humphreys County, and Montgomery County. So, but otherwise we're pretty close to full reporting from the entirety of this congressional district. So again, let's see. Cheatham. Okay. Got it. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So I think overall a successful night. For those who are asking me to interview Zach Walls, absolutely, I will. I'm going to be interviewing all of the candidates that I can, all of the major candidates in these districts and states that I think we have the opportunity to win in. I just interviewed this morning. Who did I interview this morning? Mandela Barnes announced his gubernatorial run in Wisconsin. Great candidate. Young, dynamic, good at social media, all the things. Great politics as well. And so I'll continue to interview these candidates, especially as we get closer and closer to this upcoming election cycle. I want to make sure that as many people who we have the opportunity to showcase as we enter an environment where Democrats are overperforming by 15, 16 points nationwide, that we give ourselves the opportunities to win wherever we can. For those asking, yeah, we're at a 4.8% margin for Matt Van Epps in an R+22 district. And we've got almost full reporting here. Looks like only about 1, 2, 3, 4 counties left that haven't fully reported. So I think we can leave it there. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Again, if you want to support my work, if you want to support these live streams, interviews, breaking news, whatever it may be, the best way to do that is to subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but it's a great way to show some support for my work and for independent media. Thank you again. And as soon as we have any other live stream opportunity, any other special election, and of course, regular election stuff, I'll be live streaming that as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. And, I think this is overall top line here, a great night for Democrats where they were able to have a 15, 16 point swing, 17 point swing right now as it stands, swing to the left. And again, if that's going to be replicated in midterms, then we're looking at a whole lot of seats that weren't in play that are suddenly in play. So something to look forward to as we head into the next midterm cycle. All right. Thanks, everybody.